Okay, so I'm starting. Thank you
Yes.
very much for that opportunity to um, introduce myself and the topic of my recent and not so recent interest and professional one as well, which is funding and investment process and investor relations. Feel free to ask the questions that you're interested in. Regarding the presentation or without the connection to the presentation, but with the connection to the topic, because everything matters. And I have just some introductory slides so that we will start and get warmed up, so to say. And basically, I want to speak about like what am I doing in here and why can I speak and about what I can speak, and I can tell you about my practice. I am working for already 5 years in a venture fund that is called the Untitled Ventures. It's an early stage pre-seed and seed fund, which is basically has closed the first fund of 20 million, which is micro VC, investing in retail, advertising tech, and digital technologies. And right now we're moving to the second fund, and we're fundraising for more deep tech startups, and for actually like a little bit more mature stage, so it's stage A. But we're interested in agri-tech and everything that is concerns, especially artificial intelligence in agro-tech or agri-tech. Um, Moreover, I'm the one working now with early stage startups, not to forget my skills, so to say, and to develop, be useful for the startups. And I'm working with them on the matters of investor relations, on fundraising, community management, and moreover, I have my own early stage community on Facebook. I'm calling it like Facebook co-working, which was the product of quarantine and self-isolation measurements, and it's called WeVenture, uh, because I think it goes from we work partially, and partially from the point that we're all doing venture things, not just startups are the engine of everything or investors are engine of everything. Plus, I'm the one generating more and more interest in female tech, in female co-founders movement, and in general tech community of ladies in VC. Also, if you have any questions about that, I could talk hours. How to build the community, how to make it work, why do you need a girl in your team, or like how it can be useful. So everything about that, also feel free to ask. But we're speaking today about the basic things, and I am happy to connect probably some of the dots, not all the dots, inside investor relations of early stage startups. First of all, I will make some introduction, like what is venture investment in general, how does it in funding goes. Then we will move to the types of investors, and then we'll move to the types of investment in general, and what is a term sheet and what is inside. And then I will speak about some of the strategy and tactics I'm, let's say, promoting among startups and the startups I'm working with. So I guess it could be more practical tips, useful tips for you for the first rounds, or for, let's say, early rounds of your development. So first of all, I would like to go a little bit to the basics probably, and to say what is a venture investment. A startup can live without investments, but so it can survive, it can develop, but it would be more of a small or medium enterprise rather than a startup. Why? Because it could grow only with the help of organic instruments and analytics and marketing and so on and so forth, only by, let's say, 20-30% per year. That's why there is a huge, broad layer of venture investment in here that increases the speed of development and that helps assist the startup to make some shortcuts, to grow faster, to grow in a scalable mode, and to be more successful in a shorter time, let's say it like that. And the venture investment has its own rules of game, and it basically goes not to the startups that are making some kind of services or some kind of product that is not scalable, but you can see on the slide 4 main things that startup should consider while thinking if the team wants to gain the investment. It's the absence of market analogs, because we can't evaluate the startup with the help of some kind of examples that are already on the market, like we can do, for example, in private equity, when we are evaluating, let's say, a plant or a shop or agency and so on. Then it goes to fast growth requirement. So, you know, this thing of hockey stick, I think it's called, when first you invest and you can go a little bit lower, but then you are expected to grow really fast and really in a short time. Then also important to mention, even when starting a startup, you are thinking about the exit strategy. So you are not thinking about it, you are rather thinking about it as a project for up to 5 or 7 years, and then you are selling it, or you are doing an IPO, and so on. There are different scenarios. If you want, we can speak about that, but you need to at least to make plan A, plan B, plan C in some kind of broad sense, because it's also important to understand that the life cycle of startup goes really in a much shorter way, in a much shorter time. And that's why maybe today you're not thinking about this, but tomorrow there is a situation when you have to think about that, and you need to think about that with cold head. And also the fourth feature of venture investment, and it considers more on the conditions. It's so it's higher risk than private equity, than any other investment at all, because of the reasons that I've said above. But it's a minor stake, so it's not. It's also crucial to understand that on each round, startup gives or investor takes up to 15%. It's a normal common practice. I think that the medium is 10, especially on the early stage, for the sake of easy calculation and so on. But it's not about giving away 40, 50, 80% and so on. You can work with some venture models like that, and it's basically called venture builders. When you are, for example, giving up 70% to some agency and you have 30 on your own, and this agency gives you more stuff, HR, any other resources and so on, but it wouldn't be a venture investment. It's not an investment per se. So let's speak about four different types of investment, which I am distinguishing for myself, and in general, I think it's rather common. And we will look at them from the point of sources, risk profile, engagement, motivation, and expectations. These are like the distinguishing features. So first of all, I think that on the first step, startup faces business angels, or I think that you've heard this abbreviation, triple F, family, friends, fools. which are, let's go on the one by one by the characteristics, which have the sources of their own, so it's private sources 100%. They are rather risky, so they are ready to write off, to just to forgive, let's say, the failure in investment. They are likely to be more engaged in the startups. However, it depends on the person, because sometimes, for example, if it's a family or a friend, he or she trusts you and gives the money, invests the money, and goes away. So, but sometimes I think that more professional business angels, they are having fun. They are having this kind of slight driving feeling inside to help you, and that is also a good point, because you can work with him or her, I mean with the investor, with the angel, in one team, and to have a lot more shortcuts than before, than even in the accelerator. Motivation. I'm speaking about basically what will happen if nothing happens, right? If the startup dies, and in here the motivation is not as high, and I think it's more about being in the same value field. So if you have the same values and the same orientations in your mind, then here the business angel will be highly motivated. If not, then there will be no investment at all, let's say. And expectations are not so high, because all family members, all fools, all business angels understand that at such early stage everything can happen, and all context changes can significantly change, in a bad way, for example, or in a positive way, your situation. That's why they are rather volatile in that. Then it goes for venture funds and corporate venture funds, CVC. And this is basically more of the sources of, it could be institutionalized, it could be government money, or it could be a corporation money, or it could be money from private, from individuals. Like, for example, there are some business angels who are doing early stage investment on their own, and they are limited partners of the venture funds or CVCs. But they have already less risk profile. So because they are more oriented at growth stage. So when a startup has already MVP, has already some metrics and so on. And about the engagement, this is where, I guess, also depending on the type of venture fund, but engagement is higher than business angels usually, because venture funds are asking at least for maybe some of the scrutiny being done. I mean, reports, some presentations, speeches, and so on. The motivation is that in venture, yeah. Hello, there's something going on. Can you please mute yourself? Okay. So the motivation of venture funds is higher, because it's the main activity that they do, and according to the investments that they make, they are receiving not just their management fee, but also carry, right? Like success fee for their operations. So they are highly motivated to but it's more a pragmatical sense. So they're not motivated in one specific startup, but they're motivated to make the whole portfolio grow. And the expectations are rather high, so which means that there is less risk, but there are higher opinions on the startups that are in portfolio. So that's why the expectations could be even like really great. In some of the venture funds, it goes beyond beyond the limit, I would say. Large VCs, which goes already stage B, stage C, so pre-IPO, let's say. They are different from the venture funds and CVCs in risk profile, because they are more likely to be compared with private equity, where there are huge financial models and so on. But they also have maybe less expectations, I mean, in the amount of growth, but they have higher expectations in the stability of scalability. And finally, strategic investors and IPOs, they have another motivation and another expectations. I mean, IPOs, I guess it's more of a motivation and etc. of the company in general, but there are less expectations on some growth, and there are more expectations on business, on actually disrupting the market. And in here, the risk profile can be also different, regards the scenario that you're working on, or regards the conditions that, for example, strategic investor gives you or shows you. Then let's go to the types of funding, what there is on the market. And I would say I wouldn't stop for specific things like SAFE and KEYS and so on. I mean, with these abbreviations, I would say that from the point of view of the mostly used tools, definitely Convertible Note is number one, so which is SAFE, KEYS, and so on. So what is that? It's a loan which can be converted into a share inside the startup. So it's basically isn't the pain of doing all these legal things of giving the share to someone, but it gives you the liability to convert the money that the investor got you into the share in the proportion that is agreed. So that's why I think it's the most convenient tool in that matter. Then it goes to equity financing. So that already includes all the legal issues of giving the investment and taking the share for it. And it's more a question of strategic investors or investors at the later stages. Then there is also two interesting formats. First is something, it's abbreviation, something for equity. For example, popular ways is media for equity, equipment for equity. There is also this year one VC that is open, that does HR for equity. So the fund gives the developers for the share, or if media for equity, then for example the media company, the publisher, for example, gives certain amount of publications and PR and marketing and so on for the share in this or that startup. And also the fourth one is venture debt. It's basically the loan that is considered to be always a loan. I mean, not converting into something more, but why there is such a thing? Because a startup can't take a loan in the bank because there is no collateral, there are some legal issues and so on. That's why in some of the funds, there is such a point of venture debt when they are taking higher risk, but they're also gaining more interest rate at the end. So the fourth option does not include any shares unless it is mentioned. Maybe it's restructured, for example, or it's done in a more modified way. Okay, so now I guess, I'm sorry, I will just have a sip of water. Now I guess I will speak about more what a startup can do. So I gave you a nutshell of what is going on, what is investment, what are investors, and so on. And now I would give you some advices, maybe the recommendations on what to think, on what to consider, and so on, when you are doing the fundraising. So when are you working towards the investment? First of all, I wouldn't skip the step of talking inside your team about the rights and the liabilities that you are ready to agree on. So what are the shares that you are ready to give? How you will give them? I mean, for example, if there are two founders, are you being diluted in a simultaneous way, or how? Then speaking about the liquidity, and speaking about the valuation caps, and speaking about the what if there will be the liquidation, how you will pay the investors, in what priority, and also last but not least in this point is to understand what is for you board of directors, how you can work with that tool, because it's not just an institution. Board of directors could be a huge way to motivate, to track you, to be a business development assistant, let's say. And on the other hand, you can work in a bad way with board of directors, and then there are the cases when the CEOs and the founders can be almost fired, or can be cut from the team, which are I guess very dramatic situations in that point. And also to think about cap table members. So who are you putting in your equity? Because for example, in emerging countries, there is this concern of allowing the government to come inside the startup. More the people are thinking that it could be a toxic issue, because no other private investor would want to come after the government comes, and because it makes the risks of being free in your business model, in your policy issues, and so on for the startup. Well, it's partially true. But I think that it's also a matter of not just simple yes or no question, or white or black, but it's a rather a willingness, or a capability of the team to move, or to move with the government, to move to the government flow, or to stick to the private ones, and how. So it's basically, you need to understand it in your own team. Then it goes to fundraising communications, which are also called investor relations. I mean, investor relations is a whole broad term, and fundraising is just a part of it. And I would like to give some of the points that, or maybe to repeat some of it. So first, limited time. Yeah, fundraising is not about doing it always. It's not about ongoing activity. It has the time frame within which you are working. I mean, if you understand and if you arrange that in your team, you are a fundraiser, you are responsible for that, then you are delegating all other functions of all of the people, and you're working basically just for the sake of fundraising. Or if you are later stage startup, you can take some agency or some representative that will work on your fundraising, at least to work on the first part, on the broader part of the pipeline of investors. So what is the pipeline of investors, you may ask? It is the second point that I've mentioned. So it's 150, 25, 1. This is the rule. It's not the rule. I think it's the common practice that if you want to gain some investment, do not think that it could be like, okay, you've met an investor and it's a love from the first sight, and you're getting the money just after talking with just one of them. No, it's basically, if you want to have one investor on board, you need to research for around 100 funds or business angels. Then you go to 50 responses from investors. I mean, it could be emails, it could be just a conversion rate from just the people that you have researched for to the people who have answered and said some of the feedback. Then it could be also the calls or brief calls, not thorough ones. Then you go with 20 investors on the calls and on the discussions. Then you go with the 5 investors on discussing the term sheet. So I mean, term sheet is an agreement of basic conditions of investment, and then one investor is agreeing on the terms and invest. And this is optimistic scenario. If you don't, for example, in August, in July, I do not recommend to fundraise, because everyone are on vacations and they do not have these investment committees, and they're not being active. That's why the pipeline could be like 100, 25, 1, 0. So dramatically lower than here. Then if you okay, you found the investors, right? And you've researched for them and you think that they're a good match. How you can understand that it's a good match? You check first the tech domain, so which means that in what industry and what stage they are investing. If you have the time, or you have, for example, research assistant or whatsoever, you can also look at the startups in the portfolio that can be synergical to you and to your startup. For example, not just saying that I can see that you are investing in agri-tech, and we can be useful, and we can be within your investment focus. No, you can also, and it will be much higher appreciated if you would think one step ahead and saying, okay, you have this ABC startup, which is in agri-tech, and I think that we can build something together. That already decreases the risk, the probability of you going bankrupt, I mean your startup going bankrupt, and increasing the probability of venture growth, of true venture growth. However, on the other side, you also look not just at the domain of the investor, but the value the investor can give to you. So right now there is like a saying, a principle, that there are lots of money around you, and even from the, for example, government side, and much more appreciated is the approach of choosing the investor with your head and your heart, let's say, and you can see how the investor can add the value to your startup. So how can be smart, not just money. And last but not least, there are three things that you need to understand the features of its pitch deck, invest deck, and teaser. Maybe you already got to know and got to build up your own decks, but I would just say the most the peculiarities of each of the formats. Pitch deck is the one that you are telling, that you are expressing yourself on the stage. So it's less text possible, and people sitting in the audience, when receiving the slides that you were that you were presenting, sorry, they could not understand what you like. They can lose the thought. So the slides, the pitch deck, is supposed to be insufficient without a representative, all right, without a founder, for example. On the other hand, invest deck is the most thorough thing ever, I guess, and it includes everything that you think that the investor could that for the investor it could be more important. For example, the business model, the unit economics, the screens, the mock-ups, and everything could be included in the invest deck. However, I also suggest that it shouldn't be a presentation. It shouldn't be a deck of 50 slides or something, but it should be rather a presentation of like 15 slides, from 15 to 20 slides, and everything else could be in the appendix, or everything else can be sent to the investors afterwards, for example, the Excel sheets or whatsoever. And the teaser is also a tool for investors to basically, I think that this is invented for the social networks, for example, for LinkedIn. So if you are fundraising and you are not just sending 20 slides with lots of information straight ahead, but you are supposed to tease for further call or communication, and that's why a teaser is also called a one-pager. So on one page, you are answering the questions of who are you, what is your technology, right? Like how, what is the problem that you are solving, for whom it is, like what's your target audience, and some of the features that heats up the attractiveness of your startup. But also you shouldn't forget that meanwhile you need to do some of the things that is closely connected to fundraising, that is not fundraising per se, which is always networking and pitching, like working on your brand awareness. And in here I have also the cases of startups that are not as strong as, I mean, technically strong, for example, as some of the others, but they are managing, they're handling in a smart way their media communications, and they're always on the stage, and they're always somewhere, and so they are making it going up to the investment rounds, just due to their due to their awareness, and this decreases the risk, the probability that you would die. I mean, in the heads, it's how I think that it is how brain works, so to say. Even though if you sit and think about it, you will think, but well, everyone can die, right? Despite of the networking, and maybe networking makes them just speak too much and not work. But on the other hand, if you are if you go public, you are somebody. That's why it's also worked like that. Then also I would recommend you making some kind of frequently asked questions, question tests. What I imply is that, for example, there are open Y Combinator or 500 startups or some VC funds, I mean in-house VC fund questionnaires that the startup should fill in, like the applications and so on. And this is crucial for you to take into account it and to work on it, not on a daily basis, but for example, on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis, if you have everything changing. And that will help you answer these typical investor questions, as well as understand your proposal towards the investor. For example, to think about your advantages all the time, to think about the rentability, or think about this decrease in investment, decrease in survival that you have. Then also you need to, as I said, that the fundraising goes a limited time. You need to divide the responsibilities among team members. You need to clearly understand that, okay, person A does the fundraising, person B creates all the decks, and if there are some blind spots in fundraising, then it's for the person A to be responsible for. The next point I would particularly mention, that I have already said about that you need to understand your advantages. Not just saying that you are cost efficient team and you have a diversified number of achievements or whatsoever, but clearly, like, this is the percentage of computing power that we use. We are cheaper because we are more flexible, or we generate it in a much clearer way, and so on and so forth. There are different kinds of how to answer that, but like, keep in mind from 3 to 7, I would say, not 5, just from 3 to 7 main awareness, main advantages that could be used in every single negotiation, in every single pitch that you are working on. Then it goes to unit economics. I think it's another topic to speak about for hours and hours. But you need also to, according to your pitch decks, to your concepts and so on, to your invest decks, etc. You need to build your own unit economics. You need to think about how you're fine-tuning it, what are low-hanging fruits, and how to quantify them, and so on. I think I wouldn't stop if you don't want me to at unit economics, because I think it's an endless ocean of knowledge. So I guess, like, summing all up, because hours and hours of talking, and I think that it would be much better for me to answer your questions. There are some pieces of advice to follow. Yeah, it's intensive. Fundraising is intensive. Investor relations are intensive, and you need to think through. You need to think things through. But I would recommend you to work on plans B, C, D, Z. If you don't receive the investment, which is not the point to be sad about. It could be an emerging market. It could be the context. It could be the political situation. It could be not your fault. You know, this imposter syndrome shouldn't be a problem. Then you need to understand that you need to give before you get. So it's not about not telling the investor a secret sauce of your startup only after the contract is signed, only after the term sheet is signed, but it's making the soil more viable, much more useful, and so on. Planting the seeds before you will see the result. It also concerns the networking and all kinds of pitching. I think it's about working on training the muscles of networking, let's say it like that. And the last but not least, to take it easy, like not to get into some dramatic situation, and at the same time to take it solid, not to not to think about it as a snip of your fingers or something that goes easy peasy. Nothing goes easy, but it goes interesting way and challenging one. So that's why I guess I would finish with my presentation at that point. You can write me on my email that I've mentioned. You can make a screenshot if you have any questions, and I would also put my social networks in here. But well, you can follow me. You can connect me on LinkedIn. But everything else, I have also Facebook and Instagram. It's there are now Russian-speaking sources for me. So if you speak Russian, then of course I can give you also the contacts of that from that. But if you have any other questions in English or something, I would be more than happy to answer by email or in LinkedIn. So I guess for the main part, that is all. If you heard anything I've said.
Thanks, Irina. So, guys, the questions we actually asked before, just throughout the presentation, you had chance to write your questions in the chat. Unfortunately, I can't see any of them. I hope that you generated the questions within your notes or computer. So feel free to start ask the questions. So please. The floor is yours. You can both write or raise your question. Irina, please.
Hi, Irina. Can I speak Russian or in English is better? How do you prefer?
Irina, I would ask you to speak. I'm
okay.
Sure, Irina, it is better to Russian. However, for other participants, I believe so. We have participants from Asia, from African countries.
Okay.
Be
Great.
good yeah. If you want, you can tell Russian. I can translate into English.
No. It's okay. I would like to ask. While you are doing a startup, it's always you are working too fast. You are having too much problems. You are not doing the perfect job as would you like. Okay, you understand what I mean. How do you cope with it? Is it okay to have too much bugs, or for example, or to release a better version and to ask customers to try it? Or is it, I understand that it is okay, but still I would like to know your opinion. Okay, because for me personally, it's difficult. It's my first startup. It's the most difficult thing. I'm calling someone to try to do something, and I know that there are a lot of things to do more, but time is pressing. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's much more of a startup philosophy issue than some straightaway principle, and no one knows what the right way is, but everyone understands that there should be a market fit, that there should be the customers, there should be the users, etc., etc. That's why I guess that the main point, and this is what I'm also in my day-to-day life, I think I'm also using that. The main point is to go from the users. So what the users need, and that's why moving from these CastDev interviews to the hypothesis, to the points that you want to fix, to implement, to modify, and so on. That for me is much more healthy way of building a startup, rather than making it perfect, then releasing it, and then seeing that the context has changed, that the people are already satisfying their needs with something else. That's why I think it's yeah, it's hard, I know, because I also have this syndrome of perfectionist before I was working in a startup, before I was working in the venture sphere in general. But it's this is the way how you go on that wave and you move up to the, so it's not about being ahead of the wave, it's about being in the wave and trying to manage it all, like, I mean, to manage how you stand at least. That's why, like, asking questions, receiving the answers, fixing the bugs or modifications or features and so on, this is ongoing process, always going. And also what makes it on the first place difficult, on the second place more flexible, is that there are no analogs, and it's not, as I said, it's not a plant, it's a district with the same people, etc. It's something core, the core technology that you move to different commercial use, let's say it like that. And that's why it makes you more of a manual manager, that it makes you, it gives you the opportunities for more maneuvers. So it's a pleasure and a sin at the same time.
Yeah, I understood you. Thank you very much. And also
You're
about the pitch deck, what do you think about the possible questions? Should we prepare? I understand that we should prepare as much as possible, but there are also a list of standard questions. Maybe you can share some questions with us, or speak about from the investor point of view, what is interesting for you in the team or in the project.
I think that the pitch deck is when you have only from 3 to 5, let's say just 7 minutes to be on the stage and to gain the attention of the ones that you want. That's why these basic economic questions, who, how, and for whom, should be answered. And then there should be, I recommend to make this huge backlog, I mean appendix, of the slides that you are not showing. But if the investor is asking that, for example, like, what are your competitors, and you haven't told that during the compulsory part, you say, okay, let's like do the click, and then it goes, and then you are showing it. It means that you are preparing, that you do your homework, and that is a huge plus towards it. And also from the investor point of view, I need to understand that a person who is on stage has some kind of insight of the pain he or she is solving. So it's not just a person who woke up one day and realized that this should be the main thing to do. No, it's a person who has the background in the industry, or who has a team in the industry, or I mean, just from the problem that he or she is solving, but to maybe to suffering from the problem, or to have suffered from that problem, and so on. That is also that also feels, I mean, when a person is speaking about that. And also, if you want, I have an article in Rusbase on Russian about pitch decks, like how to make them and what to put in there and so on, like my
experience,
cases and so on. I can also share the link, or somehow
will be appreciated. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Irina, we have 2 questions, not 2 more questions in our chat. Do you want me to read it, or you have access to that? I can read it.
Yeah, I can see that. So let's say I'm raising some equity fund. What amount of equity is ideal to give up considering? So I would go from the point of, from the end point, so to say, by the beginning of strategic investment or IPO, founder or founders should have more than 50%. It's ideal situation. I mean, let's go from the ideal. And then you understand that you go through more or less 4 or 5 investment rounds. That's why it's like from 7 till 10% is the ideal framework to give in the equity. And each time, so that's why that you will go on the end of the journey and the beginning of something completely new with the major part of shares for the founders, because otherwise you can lose it all. And unfortunately, there are lots of cases when the board of directors is managing the situation more than the founders. I don't think that it's healthy. Maybe it's okay, but it's not for what the founders have been working on since the beginning, right? So I guess I answered. Wait, I will open the chat. If there are anything else to comment, please go on in the chat. Then what if the investor did the only one part of the agreed investment and rejects? Liana, can you please tell me, because have you done with an investor the term sheet or already the corporate agreement or the convertible note? I mean, for example, if you have done only the term sheet part, it could be considered as a non-binding thing. So it could be considered to be just a letter of intention. And unfortunately, it's much harder to make the investor liable if you have only the term sheet. However, if you say that, for example, half of the investment, so half of the tranches is being done, then it goes to the legal negotiations and even the court issues sometimes. I'm not a person who will say what will happen. However, I think that if you have the corporate agreement, 100% that you will get your investment back. However, it's also, this subtle feeling that you don't want to worsen the relations with your investor, because then you will be also in one team. And so it should be also a diplomacy thing, I guess, not just the legal stuff and, we will have this money no matter what, and so on. I guess I hope I answered your question. So from Faith, it sounds like we're receiving a question from the space. What is expected to be in the appendix? Share it on Slack. So I guess,
share it on Slack. You mentioned something that you were going to share link of the different ways of things expected to be on pitch deck. So when you mentioned it, that was why I said you should please share it on Slack. So my question is actually,
okay.
what is expected to be in the appendix section in your pitch deck? Because I see people write pitch deck and they put appendix. So most times I wonder what is supposed to be there.
Mm-hmm. I will say that, it's the main questions. I think that you can take also, for example, the questionnaires of the VC funds, even of the accelerators. Like, for example, you go to the page of Y Combinator, you go on questionnaires, and you see what types of questions there are. And you are putting the slides of the appendix answering these questions. So it's about the market, the competitors, it could be some of the screens of your product. It could be a go-to-market strategy, like how you are planning to grow, to which countries you go, to which markets, etc., etc. So my basic recommendation is to go, for example, to Y Combinator and to check there the sections and to make the slides as answers to these sections. However, for example, if they ask about the advantages or the team, I think that it should be mentioned in the compulsory part of the pitch deck, because you need to distinguish yourself from the others, and you need to understand what is you need to say what is your team, because on the early stage the team is very crucial, and this is one of the main arguments why the investor may invest. So the next question is, what kinds of methods can early stage pre-revenue startups leverage to determine their valuation when raising their first? I think it's so if you Daniel, if you think about some kinds of evaluation methods, the traditional evaluation methods do not work here. I mean, you can't make discounted cash flows on, but there are the frameworks. I guess it's already like a custom in the VC sphere, which you can name yourself up to. I wouldn't say about the European startups completely. I mean, it depends on the tech domain. It depends on the software or hardware and so on. But there are different articles and researches on that kind of things. I think that the most thorough source is NFX, which makes rather thorough researches on the opinion and so on. So check this out. I'm not sure if they're there, but and also I think that PitchBook and Deal Room, this kind of databases, they have as an open source this kind of valuation frameworks. So check it out for your sphere or for your product.
Irina,
yeah.
So the basic question I always get when I'm talking to investors is, how do I justify my valuation, right? And I get it that maybe I can look through a couple of sources here and there, but I can't really put a valuation on the amount of time and hours I've spent developing and the business and the technology that I'm working on. So would it be like would it be good to make it seem like, can I put a value on the number of hours I've been working, or a value on the overall technology that we've been developing? Does that work as a determining factor to kind of evaluate my business?
I don't know if you face it. Thank you for the comment. I don't know if you have faced this situation or not, but I think that you shouldn't. Well, it could be maybe a shocking thing to say, but you shouldn't justify your valuation if it is within these frames. If you understand that you're evaluating yourself normally, not like hundreds of millions of dollars for a pre-seed startup. Because if there is a question like that from your investor saying, you are not worth it, you are too high or something, tell me justify it. I think that the investor doesn't understand where he or she goes. I mean, the business angels, because maybe there are lots of business angels that goes straightly from PE or from IB or from something else, straightly to venture capital. and they put these principles that are not used in venture capital from their background. And that is how the conflict situations comes. And that's why you need to talk things through, saying, okay, like, we're not PE. Are you ready? Are you okay with that? And do not spend much time saying, oh, we spent 50K hours of developers to build this product, or so on. I think that it is also important to understand, to go to the maybe professional business angels rather than PE angels, let's say it like that, or to go to a friend's family, like your closest network, your closest environment, because they will, in front of their eyes, you will not raise your valuation too high, for sure. I guess.
Okay.
That's why, well, just I'm against this justifying. Just you can say that, okay, we've been working since, I don't know, 2019 or so on. We have such a team that has been working for a year without investments, without salary, and so on. And this is our mock-up, and everything else, leave it to the investor. If he has these questions of like, well, but like, say it in more detail, pay attention. Could be a red signal for you, because if you even answer all these questions and it will be fine, then it's like with HR, right? That you are taking to your, as a colleague, to your working place, and then you see this face every day, and then you have another and another and another conflict, and so on. It should be more of like, I don't know, it's weird, but to say soulmate, that it should be business angel mate. Something like
Okay.
that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Then I have, can you please exit strategy? Also, you mentioned that there are benefit involved. You have, yeah, okay. So first of all, exit strategy. It shouldn't be also, I mean, for an early stage startup, it shouldn't be something very specific. It shouldn't be a super duper detailed business model of how and where we will be in 7 years, because there is a high risk, even I think 100% risk, that you will not, even in 3 months, you will not be where you plan to be. Then, for example, if you are growing it for a corporation and to be sold to the corporation, or you are growing it as something in general, and then it will live its life, and then it will go to IPO and so on, to which scenarios you are looking forward. That is also could be a good thing for business angels, investors, and so on, because you will understand more about the values that they have. And sometimes business angels do not go, for example, to the startups that are B2B and that are clearly beneficial for the corporations, and they are clearly will be sold as a strategic investment to, I don't know, the banking system or something else, because the angel investors can choose these soulmates, let's say, in the startups, and they could even go to the startups that want to be independent and build something on their own. It's an example. There are another examples, and that doesn't mean that there is only one thing, and social impact and so on. And also about women in your team. Yeah, I think that, well, speaking about advantages here and now, there are lots of acceleration investment programs, VC funds that are investing or providing the opportunities for diversified teams where there is a woman not in the team, but as a co-founder. So it's a basic step towards making startups more diversified sphere. Not just male developers, but also female melodies. Let's say it like that. And on the other hand, there are the industries, these domains, where having a girl on board, you will receive, it's like, it's not a hygienic factor, but you will receive much more positive feedback. For example, and this is the industry that I am working closely with, is fashion retail tech. When on the stage, for example, or on the investor meeting, you see 3, 2, or even one guy, I mean, a male founder or founders, it could be rather a doubtful result, rather than you can see a girl or girls. But it's the, I think that this is the paradigm of the industry. This is how the industry goes. That's why also I think that in any other lifestyle, in education for sure, that's also the thing, the issue in lifestyle tech, having a diversified team arises the opportunity to get investment, or to get in some program, or to get a business partner, and so on. So yeah, well, Jen writes that I'm not telling you some fairy tales, but it's and it's, you know, not just a thing of a matter of being a feminist or not. It's a matter just of pure pragmatism, let's say, because feminist is definitely much more political or psychological thing, and not I'm not the one to tell you how to live. That point. So
right.
there
Yeah,
are no
thank you.
questions else. Yeah, thank you.
Irina, I see that questions are over, or you are still you are still are able to accept some other questions. Would it be possible, or it's done on that side? Guys, are there any other questions?
I
Yeah,
think I have one question. Can you recommend sites where we can get investors, like angel investors and all those things?
Can you please repeat, because I think that my internet went off for a moment. I
Can you
didn't
please
hear
recommend
properly.
sites where we can get angel investors, all these investors, sites where we can get them?
Maybe you will write in the chat. Can you hear me normally?
Yes, I can. Okay.
Can you write in the
Let me
chat,
write
and
it. Let me
I
write
will answer, please, because I have some kind of hiccups. Let's wait for a moment.
Guys, any other questions?
Can you comment signs where they can get the list of angel? Okay, so I think there is angel list, there is the Crunchbase, there are even some of the open pages of Pitch Book and Deal Room. I mean, open because they have they're basically making money out of selling the data about everything that's happening. But also you can follow the media. You can see, for example, the deals that are going, that are some of the investors are making on the market that you are interested in, or in the market where you work. Yeah, I think that also you can go on through the startups that you can see in your own industry, like lifestyle or something, and then follow their investment history, and then see what are the investors that have been investing in there on the early stage. So go from case by case, could be also an option. Okay, so Anita is asking, can co-founders also answer the question raised by angel investor? You mean when negotiating? Of course. I think that, but actually, I think that on, for example, the first call or the first communication, there could be just one founder or co-founder talking with the investor. But when it comes to the point of getting things through, like discussing the scheme, discussing the roadmap, etc., co-founders are more than welcomed. I hope I answered. Okay, thank you.
Other questions, guys? Irina, did you get this last question? Can co-founders also answer the questions raised by?
Yeah.
Yes,
I
okay,
answered.
yes, I see. Okay, like a final question, guys. We have still 7 minutes. So Irina, I assume we can sum up. So thank you very much. Actually, I would say that it was like one of the active sessions we had in Agritech, because like you may think that they are less questions and they were less interactive, but we unfortunately had sessions when the guys were like less active than they are now. So I assume that's it's good that still we have this much of questions. This is the problem of our online environment, actually. Yeah, so it's, I don't know whether you are experiencing these kind of challenges while in other online sessions, when you're leading online sessions in Russia or other countries. But for sure, for us, for Agritech program, this online environment is a little bit challenge, and we hope that for our next round we will come to the offline, and we would actually really enjoy your physical session in Armenia. So we're really looking forward to that, and we we very much hopeful to see you in person. So please, if you will be sometime be in Armenia in any of it can be work trip or personal. So we would be happy to discuss with you your projects, and see how we can collaborate further and just know you in person like more. So thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. I would answer the last question. I mean, I got it about the crowdfunding shortly. Of course, it's also one of the ways to gain the investment. It's just that for some of the projects, it's much more difficult to get the crowdfunding, because, for example, B2B startups are not able to attract as much attention as B2C, and to understand, to explain, and so on, the problem that the startup is solving. About the parts, well, everything that is not forbidden is allowed. So that is why I think that you need to be based on the resources you are spending. If you are making it separately or if you are making it together. But for B2C, crowdfunding is a serious alternative and a serious tool to at the further stages to prove your product fit on the market, because you would say, aha, you see, we have the crowdfunding, we have the people actually invested their money or prepay to get what they want. So that is why I think that you can try it with B2C if you have the B2C product, and if it's beautiful and lifestyleish and everything, that could go perfectly. Okay, so I hope I answered.
Thanks, Irina. Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, have
Thank
a nice
you very
day.
much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a nice day. Thank
Bye-bye.
you very much. Thank you. Goodbye.